Hi guys, and thanks for joining me. Today we are going to make cinnamon apple pie rolls, and they are going to be amazing. But also with the same recipe, we are going to be making some ham and cheese rolls. So when I first made this recipe, it was actually pizza rolls because I had made a pre-ferment, like I had made like a dough like beforehand the night before, but I had actually made the wrong dough. I made a bread dough instead of a pizza dough. So I ended up making like a cinnamon roll type thing, but instead of stuffing it with the cinnamon rolls, I stuffed it with pizza sauce and cheese and pepperoni. And it was a hit instantly. The kids loved it. They like it more than pizza, and it's actually really great because it is a lot more cost effective because there is a lot less cheese than on a pizza. And then of course just the dough itself is like, I make my doughs from scratch, so those are like I think 40 cents. So it's pretty cost effective. If you can't make this from scratch, like if this is all a little much for you, that's okay. You can always go to like the freezer section, and they sell already made like frozen dough, like bread dough, and you can just defrost that and squish that out and use that and roll it up and make the same thing. I'm gonna start here with my warm water, and to that I'm going to add active dry yeast. I'm going to add 2 1/4 teaspoons. I just use a little more than heaping on both of those. 2 tablespoons of sugar. You could also use honey. 2 tablespoons of dry milk. My daughter has a dairy allergy, so I like to use this dry coconut powder. 2 tablespoons of softened butter, but I like to use olive oil because I find it's more cost effective, and I genuinely have a lot more oil on hand than I do vegan butter. 4 cups of flour. And a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to mix this all up, making sure I'm scraping the sides of the bowl. And this is the original recipe that I started using to make like sandwich bread. I wanted to stop buying sandwich bread at the store. It was over like $3 over usually when I would purchase it. That's special circumstances for me. My son is allergic to eggs and my daughter is allergic to milk. So sometimes I have a hard time finding breads depending on which store I go to. So it became a lot easier to just make my own, especially when I got myself a Pullman loaf pan. This is basically a large bread pan, but it has a lid on it. And the lid makes sure that like the bread is shaped like this, which is basically like your white bread that you would get from like the store, basically. And I bought it a couple years ago, and honestly it sat in storage, like in my shelf there, along with like a whole pound of yeast, and just I usually keep a large amount of flour. Normally before COVID, I would probably go through about, I would say this is probably a little over 10 pounds, like 10 or 15 pounds of flour a year. And this year alone, since I've started making all of our sandwich bread from scratch, I've probably gone through maybe 50 to 75 pounds of flour since December. I mean, granted that some of the December cooking was actually like, you know, baking for family, but usually pre-COVID, a lot of my baking was also during the holidays, making treats and stuff for family members. I'm just kneading this together. I don't usually like to have to take it out of the bowl and dirty up the counter if I don't have to. I've noticed that sometimes the dough seems stickier than other times. It probably has to do with how long I wait for my boiling water to cool down, because I'm impatient. I have like a water dispenser and I'll turn on the hot water and wait for it to like heat up to boiling, and then measure out the water and then wait for the boiling water to cool down until it's like infant method where you touch it and it's not hot to you, like, you know, it'd be okay for a baby, and then I put the yeast in. So I'm sure there's a lot of variation between when I put the yeast in and the temperature, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with how sticky the dough is. Also, I haven't gotten into the fashion of weighing out your ingredients for precise measurements. I'm more likely to convert a recipe that has weights into a rough cup estimate, because it's easier to just kind of feel a bread dough than it is to just drag all that stuff out just to make a bread. I'm pretty sure if you just learn how to make it and just keep making it, you'll be able to feel when it's right. I don't often mess loaves up, but I have been trying to freeze them and thaw them out, and it hasn't been working, and I think it's because the temperature and the amount of yeast I use and the time that I let the dough proof or rise or anything is probably too long. I think it's a combination of things, and I think it's because I'm using this same recipe for multiple applications when it'd probably just be easier to use a different recipe. But I'm kind of determined because I really like this recipe. I've memorized it, it's so easy. I like recipes that are like simple to remember. And I've made so many loaves of bread, and my family we just love the fresh baked sandwich bread. It really is worth the extra effort. And if I can figure out how to be able to freeze it and bake it, that extra effort will be less and less, because I'll be able to just freeze dough, put it in the freezer, take it out, thaw it, and then bake it without having to actually knead out a loaf every single time. And I usually like to double this batch, but I don't have a lot of time I want to dedicate to making a bunch of stuff today. I'm making the rolls basically because my son needs lunch for school, and the sandwiches don't tend to keep well for whatever reason. These tend to keep a little better. He eats when he eats. It doesn't matter to him what's going on, so I just try to make it a little more accommodating. I'm gonna knead this out till it's a good consistency here. You see it's not too sticky. A little, but not really. I'm going to oil up this bowl a little bit and then put the dough in there and flip it around. Actually, I think I'm gonna divide it first. It'll probably be easier because I do plan on making the apple pie filling rolls, which I haven't made before, but they should be delicious. I'm very excited for these. And then I'm going to make ham and cheese rolls. So I haven't made those either, but if they're anything like the pizza rolls, which I don't see why they'd be any different, they're going to be delicious. And then these will bake up in just 2 9-inch trays. The cinnamon rolls I have actually frozen and cooked from scratch, but I don't think that you can mess up a cinnamon roll. I think it'd be very hard to do. This is where you're supposed to weigh out your dough to divide it, to be all professional and fancy like, but these are for the kids' lunches. I mean, it's not rocket science here. If some of them are a little bigger than other ones, then some of them are a little bigger than other ones. Here, we're just trying to keep people fed. We're not trying to be too fancy. It's always a plus if it looks fancy while you're doing it, because that's a no effort thing that you get extra points for. And a lot of this stuff, like I said, it's not really that hard. I used to be terrified of making anything with yeast in it. I'm a fairly decent baker, but I had never wanted to get into yeast. It seemed like a hassle. And then the funniest thing is I realized that I actually am, as like a science student, I like chemistry, and it is chemistry, and I fell in love with it. So eventually I am going to get myself an instant read thermometer and all the little fun tools, and I will be a very good bread baker. Personally, it's probably because I am a bread lover. It's bad for me. I love my carbs. I could go my whole life and never eat pasta again, but the bread's where it's at. And I'm a sucker for a white bread. So I really need to learn to love sourdough and wheat, which I will get there. But I think first I want to try to figure out how to get really, really good, like tasty fermented yeasty rolls that don't have eggs or milk in them, so the kids can enjoy like a nice dinner roll. I still haven't been able to find anything. I'm pretty sure that's because the eggs and the milk are what's most important in those recipes. So I'm gonna get these covered up, get my hands washed up, and we are going to let these sit for half an hour until they're about double in size. So while these doughs are going through their first rise, I'm going to make Mario his breakfast that I make him. It's kind of like top ramen but for breakfast, if that makes any sense, because we're doing just some quick oats. These are like the 1-minute cooking oats. And I usually do about a half a cup. I'll add some cinnamon. I usually do about 4 good shakes. Some brown sugar. I usually do about 2.5 spoons. A little pinch of salt. And then these are like apple chips, or you can use pretty much any kind of a freeze-dried or crispy dried fruit. And I'll just crush these up so that they're, you know, fairly small, because the smaller they are, the less time they will take to rehydrate. So it is almost like a cup of noodles, but oatmeal style. And Mario will take this to work, and all he has to do is add some of the water from like the little tea boiler or whatever it is, or if your work has like a Keurig or like a microwave, you could put this in a microwave safe dish, because this is not microwave safe. This is only like heat safe. He can put boiling water in it. He does complain about this one. This is a clean canteen. It's like vacuum sealed shut, but he complains because like it's just the thin steel, so it does get hot for him. So I would recommend insulated if you were going to be doing something like this, for like, you know, would be the best bet. I usually give it a shake and a stir depending. See how it looks. I think I will put in some more apple. I actually prefer the freeze-dried Fujis from Trader Joe's. They have like a better like consistency. They're like silky almost, where these are firm and almost toasted. And basically it's like making a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. You just add the water, let it sit, and a spoon, and you have a hot breakfast. It's kind of like an alternative to doing overnight oats in your refrigerator. Like if you wanted, like instead of cold oats, if you wanted warm oats. Okay, so I'm gonna punch down my dough. And I think since it'll be easier, I will make the apple cinnamon ones first. I'm going to grease my 9-inch pan. Now for this, I do put the dough on the counter. Now, when I opened up this jar of apple pie filling, this one was in apple slices. So I put the immersion blender in it and hit it a little bit so that it was more applesauce-y, I guess is what it would be, but not as wet as applesauce really. I'm just going to spread a good layer. And then for a little added extra, I'm gonna put some of this extra filling in the bottom here, because if I flip it over, it'll make it like it's the top, and hopefully it'll make like an apple pie topping kind of a feel. Mario suggested that I hit this with some more cinnamon. And some sugar. And then I'm going to roll this up and cut this bad boy. Kind of with a little bit of rye here. Okay. Not the prettiest job, but we are just going to slice it and put it in the pan anyways. Start by cutting it in half. And then I like to score it out a little bit to see if I can't get the number of slices I'm after. If they're a little messy, that's okay. I've never had a problem. They kind of firm up when they rise a little bit and bake. Although this middle is getting sloppy. I'll cover these with plastic and let them rise for about half an hour. So I should have used this tray the first time, but here we go with the ham and cheese. I'm going to put some mustard, because what is ham and cheese without mustard? This is just some shredded mozzarella cheese. This is some honey ham. We use this for our lunch meat and I get it at Safeway. But this is just sandwich ham. I found it best that when you're making something like this, you chop everything up, because it gives like the dough a chance to penetrate into the meat and allow it to like kind of incorporate in a little better, because you're not forcing it to just go flat up against like a piece of bologna or something. Which I think if you put bologna in this, it would taste like a giant hot dog. Just going to spread it out. It doesn't have to be perfect. Making sure some of these just thicker chunks aren't too thick. And then we are going to spray this pan, roll it up and cover them, and then set these on top of the oven that's preheating at 350 to let them rise to bake them, and then they should be delicious. Half. This looks like it is a great deal more than the apple cinnamon. Like a great deal more. These look good already. Now for the apple cinnamon rolls, I kind of made these pineapple upside down cake style. So the bottom of this pan is actually the top. So you're going to want to flip it over onto another pan. That way your nice thick layer of apple pie filling is going to be on the top. And for the ham and cheese rolls, I just flip them out onto another plate and then flip them back over. They're not wet or anything, they're just kind of almost like bread rolls, so I'm just going to use my hands and flip these back over. You can fill these with all sorts of things. Personally, I think I want to fill them with some pesto and chicken or some ham and mushroom. I also wish instead of using this lunch meat, I would have used the cube ham that I usually buy, because I think like a thicker ham would have been really good in here. And then these apple pie cinnamon rolls, these are one of our favorites now. I've already had to make a double batch of these right away. The kids love taking one of these for breakfast when they're warm. They're also good with some ice cream for a dessert while they're still warm. And this is a new family favorite recipe. Thank you so much for watching this super long bake with me. If you're still here at the end, you're awesome. I appreciate your guys' support so much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, and I'll see you next time.